The Garmin Epix Pro takes everything that was great about the previous Garmin Epix, but further amplifies it with a massive amount of small but very noticeable improvements, ranging from an improved heart rate sensor, multi-band GPS on all models, faster charging times, and more. Not to mention what is arguably the best new addition here, the directional flashlight. We'll dig into all of this as well as discuss some of the differences between this Garmin Epix Pro and the regular Garmin Epix, the Garmin Fenix 7 Pro, Enduro 2, and others to help you decide if this is the perfect sports watch for you. And if you appreciate fitness tech reviews that get right to the point without wasting your time, make sure to like this video or subscribe to Connect the Watts to see more videos in the future just like this. So first off, the Garmin Epix Pro now comes in 3 sizes with 42, 47, and 51 millimeter options like this one I have here, all of which can be purchased with or without a sapphire lens, which will help keep the glass free from most scratching. Also important to know is that the Sapphire Edition also comes with a titanium casing, whereas the standard Epix Pro has a stainless steel casing. And while all 3 sizes have the same great looking AMOLED display and 32 gigabytes of storage, it should be noted that the battery life is substantially different between them. While the 42mm only lasts around 10 days or 4 with the always on display, the 47mm lasts much longer with 16 days or 6 days with the always on display. But what is really impressive here is this 51mm version of the Garmin Epix Pro, which has a whopping 31 days of battery life, or 11 days with that always on display on. And that is before you consider any of the battery saving options, which can extend this even further, which is just a jaw-dropping amount of battery compared with almost every other AMOLED display sports watch out there. And when you consider that the Apple Watch Ultra has just 36 hours of battery life, you can see that this is one of the reasons why endurance athletes tend to stick with Garmin. And in terms of charging the battery, Garmin has also improved that here as well, with it now taking about 1 hour to get to 90% and another 30 minutes to fully top it off, which is about a 50% improvement from what it was previously. Now, this battery life isn't quite as long as the Garmin Fenix 7 Pro, which was released alongside this, due to that watch having a memory and pixel display compared with the Epix AMOLED display. And really that display is the only difference between these 2 watches. So if you are considering the Epix Pro over the Fenix 7 Pro, it's because you'd prefer this type of display, which, now don't get me wrong, I think this display looks great. But personally, I prefer the Fenix 7 and Enduro 2's memory and pixel display because they are just easier to see while running outside in the sun. The AMOLED display is pretty bright, though not Apple Watch Ultra bright, but bright enough to definitely be viewable in direct sunlight, but it's still much easier, at least in my opinion, to read those memory and pixel displays, and since they have better battery lives, I think they have a bit of an edge here. But let me know in comments what you prefer when it comes to sports watches, an AMOLED display or a memory and pixel display with a longer battery life. Oh, and I have to touch on 3 more things about this display. One is that it seems that Garmin has decided to go with its more traditional look over the more flashier look that some of the other AMOLED display watches like the new Forerunners got, which seems a little strange to me as I feel that those designs look a little bit better and more up to date. Another thing that they've added here is what they call a Redshift mode, and you can turn this on manually or set it to turn on at night, and I definitely like it, especially when I'm trying to get ready to sleep and I don't really want this super bright screen, so I appreciate the option to shift it all over to red. And the other thing that I noticed when using the Garmin Epix Pro is that there does seem to be a small but noticeable bit of lag with some of the inputs. So here you can see the old Garmin Epix on the left and the new Garmin Epix Pro on the right. And you can see that the Pro has an extra half second or so of lag when using that touchscreen. And this also seems to be the case with the flashlight as well. Here you can see that the Garmin Enduro 2 on the left turns the flashlight on much more quickly than the Epix Pro. Now look, Garmin did lend me this unit for a review and I'm not a priority for them, so they typically send these watches to some others first and then will send me one when those first reviews are all out and done. But whoever used this watch last left it pretty trash. Like, these watches are super tough and resistant to pretty much anything, and I have never ever seen a Garmin watch like this beat up so quickly, with a lot of scratching on that titanium casing and on the back, and even one small one on the sapphire glass itself. So whoever used this watch last, I believe, had to have purposely tried to trash it up a bit. And I mention this only because it could be the case that that damage that this unit had been through has something to do with that lag that I'm seeing here. So if I ever see another Epix Pro out in the wild or at a store or something, I'll mess with the screen and then put a comment below on whether it had that same lag issue or not. Now, with the release of the Epix Pro and the Fenix 7 Pro, Garmin has added quite a number of new features, like the ability to split the map with a metric screen or have the metrics on the outside of the map. There's over 30 new sports profiles, including a new gaming profile, which is a little strange. I mean, I guess it would be interesting to see your heart rate while playing Fortnite, but I don't know. It just seems strange to track an activity in which you are literally just sitting there. Like, is there going to be a new sports profile for watching Netflix? Because I'm pretty sure my heart rate got pretty high watching Babadook. Anyways, there's also a few other new features like the new endurance and hill score, but a lot of what is new here has already been updated onto many of the other Garmin watches, so it's not really that unique to the Epix Pro. But if you're not familiar with what all of these watches can offer, it does have a lot. Obviously, you can have your heart rate and GPS tracking, but you also have navigation, both to guide you during your runs, but it can also be adjusted with new routes or trackbacks during the run with no need to have access to the internet, since all of the maps are stored internally on the watch itself. Music can also be downloaded directly onto the watch via Spotify and others to allow you to listen to music, podcasts, books, and more without internet access. You can build workouts and intervals. There's suggested workouts and even running plans that you can follow along to. There's sleep and heart rate variability and blood oxygen tracking. There's a feature they call the body battery. There's support for hill climbing to help you pace routes with lots of incline. You can broadcast Bluetooth so it can be used with other devices like Peloton or Zwift. And the list just goes on and on and on. And it's actually so much that it can be a bit messy and overwhelming to use at first, especially since the app isn't the best and most clearly designed, but a lot of the information does end up being pretty useful. Now, when it comes to accuracy, the Garmin Epix Pro is excellent in almost all areas. The new heart rate sensors are a bit more spaced out, which is supposed to allow them to be even more accurate, especially with lots of arm movement. And after testing, I have found it to be slightly better most of the time compared with the previous Garmin Epix, and it's definitely more accurate than the majority of other sports watches out there. The GPS accuracy is also top-notch. Garmin always has generally the best GPS accuracy, especially with watches like the Epix Pro, which has that multi-band support, which allows it to read off of 2 satellites at the same time, which makes it easier for it to stay accurate when you have obstructions like walls and tall buildings or the sides of cliffs. Now, sleep tracking is always a weak spot for Garmin. The tracking is okay. The average nightly HRV reading is actually pretty accurate, but it's not the best. And given the size that some of these watches are, it may just be better to take them off at night rather than keep them on for relatively subpar sleep tracking. Now, my favorite feature of the Epix Pro, which may sound a little absurd, but it's the truth, and it is that flashlight. Previously, Garmin had this flashlight on the Enduro 2, and that is one of the reasons why when I'm not reviewing other watches, you'll find me wearing the Enduro 2 a lot, because that flashlight is just so good and surprisingly useful. Like, there's a lot of features with watches that are commonly used, like the Find My Phone feature, or like I mentioned, your sleep tracking. But outside of workout tracking, there is no feature that I use more or would want more than this flashlight. Every night and every morning, I use it to get around the house and not turn on the lights to wake everybody else up. And I use it on early morning or night runs to help ensure cars can see me and I don't get hit. And it's just perfectly positioned and easy to use. It really is something that I think you have to try for a few days to really appreciate and fall in love with it and see just how useful it actually is. And I don't know anybody who has ever used one of these watches who doesn't talk about that flashlight being one of their favorite parts about this watch. Now, if you are interested in the Garmin Epix Pro, you may also want to consider going with the non-pro version. The standard regular edition will save you $100, but it won't have that multi-band support. So I would at least suggest the older Sapphire edition, which does have that multi-band support. But that is also the same price as the Pro. So you have to consider if you'd rather have a flashlight with the Pro or the sapphire glass of the regular. Now, personally, I would go with the flashlight, but it is nice not to have to worry about scratching up the screen. Then there is the Pro Sapphire, which is $100 more, and then you can have it all. And if you really want the best version possible for an additional $100, you can go for this 51mm version, which has that giant battery life. Of course, if battery life is really important to you and you don't necessarily need that AMOLED display, the Fenix 7 Pro might be the better choice, or the Enduro 2, which has an absurd 46 days of battery life. And if you want to see how these watches compare with the Apple Watch Ultra, make sure to watch this video next. As always, this is Colin Jenkins with Connect the Watts. Appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next time.